5. We're about to go live. Yep. Okay, so now we are live on the BMWC group. Let me see if I can invite some people. So I'm gonna go on mute for just one more second.
Okay.
Okay, Tilen, can you hear me okay?
I can indeed.
Okay, all right, so already we got Sean Douglas. Hey, Sean, what's going on? Hey, Tamika, what's going on? Hey, Miss Kerrigan, what's going on? Just letting everybody know we are here in the house going on.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We're going to start in just 1 minute here, just making sure that everybody knows to join us for the webinar. I appreciate people joining in to check it out. This is the BMWC Mastermind. We are masterminds in what we do. We are masterminds. All right. And we're going to start on time too, because I know a lot of people got stuff they got to do. So I'm going to start in like 1 minute. Okay. All righty. Hey. All right. 1 more minute. We're going to get down. We're going to get down. Yeah. So just as you know, guys, thank you for joining the BMWC Masterminds Facebook Live group. I am Anne Alston, the owner of the group, and we have to learn the beak all the way here to join us to talk about stress and self-care. You know what I'm saying? I am excited because you know what? I get to learn something new from a different perspective, and I really love that, right? So I'm always looking up because I'm looking at TV, but actually the camera is right here. So I'm gonna try my best to look at the camera, so I'm actually looking at you, right? So welcome to the podcast. I'm going to read a little bit of her bio. She was actually my author spotlight in the BMWC magazine. And so I'm just really excited to have her here to talk about what she knows for self-care. So to learn, she is the director of Thrive to Flourish Life Coaching. She was born in the Caribbean island of St. Vincent and has stationed herself in London so that she can help those who are tired of knowing that there is more to life to themselves and not knowing how to get it. So she is actually helping them do all this kind of stuff. And through her combination of coaching, empowerment, accountability, and support, she helps women and men break free of confusion, limitation, and fear of their life of their own terms. And she is just out there doing her own thing. And she's also a published author of her first book, First Circle, Connecting to and Embracing Self in 2018. So welcome to the BMWC Masterminds to learn. Tell everybody about yourself and, let's get right into it. Let's talk about self-care and managing stress in the workplace because we are all busy and we are all stressed out with everything going on. And so, I really want you to kind of really get in there and talk about this stuff.
Right. So thank you for having me. And I do appreciate the opportunity. So as Anne said, I was born in St. Vincent. I left home pretty young, just out of full-time education. And I decided to move to the UK to join the British Army. And I did 7 years service and left when I had my daughter. And then I reinvented myself as a project manager in the IT industry, which I've been doing now for 5 years. And alongside that, I started my coaching practice 3 years ago. My passion really is change. I love to be involved in change. In my workplace, I do that for my clients. And in my practice, I do that on a more personal level to help people create the life that they desire and deserve, and oftentimes don't know how to get. I'm not sure I'm hearing you, Anne. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I am on mute while you're talking, so I can hear you perfectly clear. So continue on, girlfriend. So let me ask the question then. Okay, so we're talking about stress in the workplace. Okay, why is this your primary focus, and how you wrote your book Full Circle, and why you think that this is really important to you when you wrote this book?
So for me, stress. Well, about when I left the army, it was a very difficult time for me in terms of navigating, because I didn't have a full support circle here in the UK. I left my family thousands of miles away to build a life here for myself. So I was a single mother, thousands of miles away from my family with no support network, trying to navigate, reinventing myself and starting afresh as a civilian. So it was a very stressful period. And I think since that time, I've seen others struggle with stress in the workplace, in their personal life, and not really prioritizing or even being aware that they need to prioritize their own well-being so they can show up fully as a mother, as an entrepreneur, as an employee, as a manager. And so the effect is in society is a full circle, which is the title of my book. So everything in life, for me, I've proven it to be a circle. It goes round and round, and it has a ripple effect. So it's about creating a positive ripple effect, and that's why I do what I do.
Okay, so we all know that we're supposed to have some sort of self-care and to manage our stress in the workplace. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's still such a problem to be able to manage your stress, even though we know that that is what we're supposed to be doing on a daily basis? So
partly, I think from an organizational perspective, because I do learning and development work as well with corporate entities. One of the big things, it's about organizational culture. So if the culture in the organization is not people-centered, then it's a lot more difficult for employees to feel like they have the room to prioritize their own well-being. So it may be that you're working extra hours, maybe you're having to take work home because you're expected to perform at a certain level. And so in that time, you're neglecting your own well-being. And over a sustained period of time, a high level of stress then becomes detrimental to your health. So even though you may be tempted to multitask, for example, you may have multiple things going at the same time. Multitasking, you're not as productive as you would be if you had the room to just focus on one thing. So it's about figuring out, one, the right culture in the organization, and two, on a personal level, being more assertive in terms of setting your boundaries and maintaining them, because a lot of people are very good at setting boundaries. But if you don't communicate those boundaries out, if you don't preserve those boundaries by encouraging others to respect them, then they serve no purpose, and then your well-being suffers.
Okay. All right. So you just hit a pressure point with me, right? Because there's a lot of people feel like that they are sort of communicating their boundaries with their supervisor or their coworkers, but it doesn't always come across the way that they think that it will come across. So can you share maybe some tips on how someone can set those type of boundaries, especially if they work in an environment that is very difficult sometimes? Maybe the coworker is having some problems with them, and how we do. We always have one person in the office that want to make you look incompetent or make you feel insecure about yourself, right? So, and you're trying to set these boundaries, right? So can you share like maybe some tips on how somebody can deal with that in a conflict situation with their boss or their coworker?
Okay, so the first thing is to acknowledge that you have a right to preserve your well-being. That's your right. Alongside that, it's important to know that you're working with others, so you have to be mindful of them as individuals in terms of how they would understand you and their communication style. Because if you're communicating a message, it's key that you communicate it in a way that matches the style of the person you're communicating to. So it's getting that right is the first step. Then I would say the second thing is about being assertive. So if you're going to say, if your boss asks you to do something and that's going to eat into, say, time with your family, you've already made a commitment to your family. If you're not assertive, you might say, oh, well, if you really want me to, I will, but I had commitments, but if you want me to. So you know you've got commitments, but you're not respecting your commitments. So when you say, if you want me to, you're essentially giving in without even a fight. So it's about saying, I would really like to help, but I've got this commitment to my family. I can certainly look at it tomorrow or whatever the next opportunity is. So it's about being assertive, acknowledging their feeling, your feeling, and then sticking to your position and not moving. Obviously, there will be exceptions where, depending on if it's a deadline that something's happened or someone's called in ill, then it's different. But if it's a run-of-the-mill incident, then you have all right to say, no, I've already made commitments and I can't help in this occasion, but I'll be happy to look at it at another time, and being firm with it, but not being disrespectful at all.
It's always the crossing, I would say that's the blurred line. When we're trying to be assertive with our prior commitments, but it doesn't always come across, and all of a sudden we're more aggressive than we are assertive. And I think that is definitely one way of trying to set your boundaries and things like that. I think I want to add to your list is just really establishing that relationship with your boss in the very beginning about the expectations of the job, making sure that you understand and they understand what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. Because, I've worked for bosses that didn't even care about your family. Mm-hmm. They didn't care about anything except for getting the job done. And if they wanted you to stay and work overtime, they actually expected you to just drop the whole entire world and just do the job or you fired. That right there is a whole lot of stress. So how does somebody handle something like that?
So, it's like you rightly pointed out, it's about having that relationship from the beginning. So when you go into a work environment, sometimes it's so easy to get drawn into being new and wanting to be accommodating. And then accommodating becomes a doormat where everyone pours everything on you and then you're under the pressure constantly. So it's key that when you go in, even though you're the new person or the rookie, that you're able to say, like you said rightly, set your boundaries. Obviously, there's going to be conflict within the workplace. So it's about maintaining your stance in a dignified way and being firm about it. There's no need, I don't think it needs to get to the point where you need to shout or scream or anything like that. And hopefully no fights, but it's about communicating. But it's about communicating firmly what your position is, respecting or acknowledging other people's feelings, but also putting your feelings out there. So when you do X, Y, Z, it impacts me in this way, and this is my position. I'm not moving. So you're not totally disregarding other people's wishes or feelings or requests. You're acknowledging them, but you're stating as well the impact. When you ask me to do this at the last minute, it impacts my well-being, it impacts my time with my family, it impacts whatever it does impact for you as an individual. And you're standing by whatever your commitment is, or you're willing to do this, but not this. So it's about managing that the way you communicate it and being firm in what you will and will not tolerate.
Awesome, fantastic. And again, those who are joining, if you have a question, please put it in the chat window. I'll be happy to repeat your question for To Learn or myself if you have a question. Okay, so let me ask another question, because you kind of touched on something else that I think is very interesting for people to understand too about managing stress. So the question I have for you is that, do you think that diversity has a huge part in stress in the workplace? workplace? Do you think, and when I say diversity, I'm talking about people of different ethnic backgrounds, or do you think that more men or women get more stress than the other in terms of managing stress in the workplace?
Wow, that that is a very big question. So I would start with in terms of ethnic diversity. Yes. And I say that for the primary reason that across ethnic diversity, different races, different ethnic groups, there's different work ethics. And that has a significant impact. So within the Black community, for example, we tend to be real grafters so that we will get our heads down and we will do what we need to do. And there's this saying that sometimes I question it when we say we have to work twice as much to get the same thing. And so we go into the workplace, and as opposed to saying, this is my scope of work, this is what I'm sticking to, we will tend to take on more because we are eager to prove ourselves. And then we set that trend, and then the workload keeps coming. When the workload keeps coming, if it's over a sustained period of time, then your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health all start to suffer and be impacted by sustained stress. That's when burnout kicks in. Now, from a male to female ratio, women tend to be, because we're naturally more emotional, we tend to be more attuned in terms of how we experience and often deal with negative incidents and experiences in the workplace. So even though as an ethnic minority woman in the workplace, you may take on more to prove yourself or to measure up to the bar. And when you do that, if it's not valued, if it's not appreciated, if it's not rewarded, all these things have an impact on you on an emotional level. So it's like, why am I doing X, Y, Z when it's not being acknowledged? And so it becomes, for some people, it becomes resentment. For some people, it becomes, turmoil that, am I in the right job? Am I being paid enough? Am I worthy? So all these questions then come up purely from the fact that you're trying to measure up by taking on more than you really should. So yes, it has an impact, whether you're across ethnic minorities, it does have an impact because we tend to naturally take on more because we think we need to do more to prove ourselves. And as a woman, we take on more because we are competing not only as an ethnic minority, but also as a woman against a man. And because we are naturally more emotional, it has a deeper impact on us in terms of our well-being.
Fantastic. That is great. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, please put it in the chat window. Thank you to Athena and Vicky who has joined the webinar. I hope everybody's getting some really good information because I think that this is really important, and I really want to thank her for sharing that. So, okay, so let's just turn the tables now. Now we're talking about self-care for all of these things that we just talked about. What are some of the things, I would say the number one thing that people need to do to manage their self-care, and really what is self-care? Because we always talk about how we're trying to take care of ourselves through just trying to manage stress is one of them, right? The other one could be, that they're trying to spend more time with their family. But what is really truly self-care in the workplace, and what does that really look like?
Self-care. So self-care is any intentional action, anything that you do intentionally to nourish your well-being. So it could be emotional, mental, physical, spiritual. If you look at yourself in a holistic way, you know that there's different aspects to life, and everybody say work-life balance, and I just say balance because you have a life, and for me, your work should fit into your life, not your life fit around your work. So I say balance. Balance is a big one because I had, like in a Western world that is more developed, there's technological advances, there's more to have, there's more to acquire, there's more to enjoy. And so there's pressures to work longer, to earn more money so you can spend more and acquire more. And so there's everyone is always strapped for time. So because there's that societal pressure to acquire more, it means more time in the office. It means more time being spent on your business and less time with your family, less time for yourself. But self-care is about finding balance, but it's also about making sure that you as an individual are acting from a place of well-being, so that you should be well spiritually, you should be well mentally, you should be well physically, you should be well emotionally. So it's about sitting back and looking at how well are you? That's the question. So anything you can do to nourish yourself. If your physical health isn't where it should be, it's about looking at your diet. It's about looking at how much exercise you're getting. If it's emotionally, it's about what's the stresses. Is it that you're having anger outbursts? What's the cause of these anger outbursts? How is it impacting your relationships? It's about looking at your spiritual well-being, whatever spirituality looks like to you. Are you spending enough time meditating? Do you have time for prayer? Are you reading your devotions? It's about these things and making sure that you have the time and you can take these actions, whatever your tools like. Well, when I work with my clients, what we do is we develop personalized toolkits. So different activities and tools that matter to you, because what nourishes me isn't necessarily going to nourish you. So it's about having that toolkit that you can refer to. So when you're anxious, you can go to this activity or this tool. When you're angry, you know this is going to calm you. When you've had a long day and you're just stressed, this is what you go to. So it's about identifying what works for you and being willing to take that time and do that action intentionally, just for the purpose, not for any other reason than to nourish yourself. So that when you show up at work, when you show up in your business, you're doing so from a place of wholeness. So that's how I work with my clients around self-care.
Wow. You hit on so many points, I don't even know where to start first.
I'm sorry.
Let me tell you something.
I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, I have a couple of things I want to add. First of all, Tamika says that we need to have a spa day. And I was just thinking, when was the last time that I actually had a spa day, that I actually just sat back and just relaxed and just put some more confidence into me? Because you know what? I do work a lot. I work 2 jobs, 3 jobs sometimes. You know, you think of family, you think of home, you think of all these places that, you know, I'm running around, people saying, Anne, how are you doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to remember that I have to have some downtime. I have to build in some downtime in order for me to function the way that I function. So I want to add to the list, you have to build in downtime. I don't care what else is going on in the world. You have to build in that downtime to say, okay, I'm not doing no interviews. I'm not doing any work that day.
Yep.
I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to look at a whole stream and binge watch my crime shows. Okay, Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, all my Chicago shows. I'm even stuck on an old episode of Body of Proof now. Okay. Look, we got to do that, right? And then, you know, Demon, he said self-care is so important. And he said, this is awesome. I totally agree. This is something that is needed because we talk about it, but do we often implement it, right? The other thing I want to add to the list that you were just really hitting on is just making sure that you are doing what's necessary, to take care of yourself. And a lot of times we forget that taking care of ourselves is just as necessary as running our business or going to school or doing something somebody else wants.
Absolutely.
It's a necessity, you know, and if we're not being serious to invest in our health, and I know I'm guilty of it because, you know, I suffer with diabetes, and that's a chore just to try to manage that, because any kind of stress or any kind of bad food or anything could just throw me completely off, right? So you know what? I had to cut back. I had to say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to have these many trainings this year because my health is more important. If I want to continue doing what I want to do, doing my Zoom, doing my BMWC, doing all this kind of stuff, I have to cut back and learn when to stop, when to just stop everything and just take care of Anne Alston so that Anne Alston is happy. It is a necessity that I have to do that. And I really want people to hear that. Now, Athena says, Absolutely important. I learned this the hard way after experiencing a bad depression. Yes, it can definitely lead to depression, suicide, lack of self-confidence. Next thing you know, you're
Absolutely.
not, and you start losing friends and all this kind of stuff because we're not taking care of our mental state and we're not taking care of our physical state. So yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna keep you going because you on the roll. You on the roll. I want you to share some other tips too. Now, outside of just a general, spa and all that kind of stuff, what can people do in terms of self-care while they are working? They're in the moment. They got all these people around them. They have to produce, their bosses over there. What can they do to help with the self-care to maintain while they're in their 8-hour job? This is really the burning question I wanted to ask you throughout this whole interview. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's about prioritizing you. So putting you first, because essentially, if you're not well, your boss is not going to have an employee to scream at or an employee to make demands of. So it's about putting you first, because without your health, you can't deliver. So if you're at work, see, I've got my stress ball. So if you're prone to stress or you're working in a high pressured environment, have a stress ball. It may be that I work in what I call Rosa Pomodoros, and essentially you determine how long your work block is going to be, and you focus on your activity for that period of time, and then you give yourself a break for X number of minutes. So I do that. So I tend to work in 25-minute blocks, and then I have a 5-minute break. The reason I do that, it allows me room to focus on my activity, but to know that I'm going to have a break. I'm going to have a period where I can go for a stroll around the office or pop to the ladies, whatever it may be, so that I have that dedicated period where I'm focused, but equally I have a dedicated period where I'm going to have room to stretch my legs or do some stretches, whatever it may be. What I would say with that is sometimes when you get caught up, as I often do, sometimes you hit that sweet spot when you're doing something and you're in flow. I would miss my break, but I make up for it. So if maybe I'll work for an hour straight, but at the end of that hour, I take my 10 minutes. That's my reward for doing what I committed to do in that block of time. So that's one way to manage it. So you're not multitasking, you're not diverting your attention across a million and one things. It's about focus, and that drives up your productivity so high, but it also gives you room to ensure that you nourish yourself, because you have room to go and have a cup of coffee. I don't drink coffee, have a water or a tea or a smoothie or whatever the case may be, but it gives you room to nourish yourself. It may be that you go away and you say your mantras for a couple of minutes and come back. Whatever it is that you do that nourish you, you factor that into your work day.
Okay. Did you stop? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, you just kind of stopped there. Okay, but you know what? You know what I want to add to that list? I want to add to the list that this is something that I do to help nourish my mind and keep me fresh. Number one, besides the fact that I'm diabetic, because I think a lot of people can still have sugar, but I literally cut out all like sugar throughout the day when I'm working, right? I can have some juice, some orange juice and things like that. But most of the time, I just have water and I have tea with no sugar in it, because it actually tastes better without all that saccharin and sugar in it. And I actually function better. My mind is much more fluid. I can think better. I'm more hydrated. So I'm always having water at my desk. So I will have like a cup of ice water, and then I will have another big thing of water as a backup. And then I will have my little tea. And then I am straight as far as fluids throughout the whole entire day, right? And I think that is so helpful, because a lot of times we get to working, we go get our coffee, we load up on the sugar, and then we get sleepy and we get sluggish, right? But I find that if you just have some ice water in the morning and you have that along with maybe a small snack or a small breakfast, you find that you're able to think and focus a whole lot more better. Well, I don't know if that shouldn't even be a sentence. You're able to focus better, right? You're able to focus better. just by having water, right, and being able to nourish yourself that way too. I also want to add to the list too to help with self-care is just know that you're there for a specific amount of time to do that work for a specific amount of time, and then after that, they don't owe you anything and you owe them nothing. And that is my philosophy. I'm telling you, that's my philosophy to
Yes,
get through the
ma'am.
day, because I've seen people come in and literally get fired like right then and there. So I understand that I'm not going to stress myself out trying to get a project done. I can only do what I can do, the best that I can do, and the best ability that I can give it in an 8-hour period. Once I have my lunch break, I'm on my own. I'm doing me. I'm doing Anne Alston at lunch. And then I come back and then I do whatever they require me to do. And then at 4 o'clock, I'm Anne Alston again. Okay, so that's it. And now at the afternoon, I'm my own boss. So I'm my own stressor, right? But I think that's important as running a business, especially when you're a business owner. All the pressure is on you. All the pressure is on you to produce and make a sale and keep your business going and things of that nature. And if you are not doing everything that you said as a business owner, not as an employee, but as a business owner, right? You got to function, because otherwise your business is going to go belly up and you're going to be no more good, right?
Correct.
All right. So what's the last tip that we want to share with people in terms of self-care? So, this is your time to kind of really like give them that must do three top things before we end out the interview here today. Because we can go all day talking about this stuff. I'm telling you.
Okay. So
Yes, we can go all day.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Things. One, I would say develop a self-care toolbox. So figure out what works for you, what nourishes you, the things that you enjoy, the things that bring you to life, that makes you glow. Figure out what those are. Make a note of them. That's your toolbox. Number two, I would say create a routine around your self-care. Just like how you've got to be at work for 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, know what time you're going to look after you. Because without that, I think health and well-being is essential before everything else. So I give myself the first 2 hours of every day, at least the first 2 hours of every day. So create a time for you. If you're better at night and night is what works for you, then by all means do that. For me, it's the morning. So know what time you're giving to you, carve it out, block it out, and respect it. It's easy to get sidetracked. Don't get sidetracked, because once your health and your well-being goes, nothing else really fits into the grand scheme of things. You'll be spending your time in the doctor's office. So your toolbox, your routine, and 3, I would say consistency. Consistency is key, because if you're an entrepreneur or you're working full time, stress is always going to be in your environment. It's going to be a part of your life, and it's probably going to be higher level than normal. So in your work environment, the stress is there. So you need to be consistent outside of the work or the business environment to ensure that you're looking after yourself. Not when you feel the burnout coming on. It's about maintaining your well-being, getting it to a high enough level, and then maintaining it there so that burnout is not a risk for you. So it's about self-preservation. So your toolbox, your routine, and consistency. Those are the 3 things I think are essential in terms of maintaining well-being: mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional.
That's right. That's right. And so I actually put those tips right here in the chat box for everybody to get. And I want to thank you for coming on here and really sharing this information. I have to say, it is definitely enlightening, because we need more of this kind of stuff. We work hard. A lot of us are really working hard to try to prove what we have and to try to just really get it out there, whether you have a job or a career or whatever it is that you got going on, a book, doesn't matter. We're all stressing. And so this whole webinar is really about how can you implement some of the things that you said into your daily life so that you are not too stressed out, that you have some sort of work-life balance, that you are doing stuff that is necessary for your self-care. And so thank you so much for sharing that information. And again, if you have questions or you want to reach out to learn, please do. She's in the BMWC group. This is the BMWC Masterminds. If you would like to do a Facebook Live with me to talk about a particular subject that is for people of careers or author, if you want to talk about your book, if you want to talk about your speaking, or if you just have a general topic that you think everybody should know about, please get with me directly. And also, just as a reminder that the BMWC application will be closing next week. So if you have plans to participate, now it's time to get your application in because we are going big this year. So other than that, thank you everybody for joining. And I will see you on Thursday when we have April coming back. We had to reschedule April last week because of conflict and I wasn't well. But we're going to have April come back on here, and she's going to be talking about setting a good example to having a good working environment for those with disabilities. And I believe we have a couple more coming up in the month of February and March. So thank you, guys. We're going to wave goodbye. Goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.
And I'll see you guys later in the group.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely, for sure. Thank you all so much for joining.